Ellen De Generes. I'm done. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Serial hypocrite Ellen De Generes, who has always maintained that she's a kind and loving person, found herself rudely exposed in that regard, and there have been numerous incidents of her demonstrating her nastiness as a narcissist. If you'd like a jolly good chortle at the end of the week, I'd encourage you to watch my HG roasts of Ellen De Generes. Make sure you're not eating or drinking anything whilst you're listening. The Mail explains, through Charlotte Dean and Carly Stern, Ellen DeGeneres' fall from grace was sparked by a single tweet, penned by comedian Kevin T. Porter in March 2020, asking people for the most insane stories you've heard about Ellen being mean, which amassed 2,600 replies, which, of course, he knew that she had this reputation for being unpleasant, and there was plenty of evidence to support it. The comedian, who was previously known as being a nice public figure, no doubt broke boundaries when she became the host of her own show in 2003, 6 years after publicly coming out as gay, and just months after returning to the spotlight as the voice of Dory in the hit Pixar film Finding Nemo. But while she had built a reputation as a friendly comic who doesn't use profanity or make jokes at the expense of others, rumours swirled in Hollywood for years that she's not nearly as warm and friendly as her public persona suggests. Facade management. Those rumours came to a head in 2020 in a stream of negative press with stars, crew, and non-Hollywood types, whatever those are, alike coming forward to share their stories about the host. Ellen faced her first whiff of backlash in October of 2019 when she took in the Dallas Cowboys football game in a luxury box, where she sat next to former President George W. Bush. Cameras showed the pair sitting side by side and seemingly enjoying each other's company, which led to a flood of criticism online. Critics pointed out that while Ellen had been a trailblazer for the LGBTQ community, Bush had backed several policies that were hurtful to gay people, including a proposed constitutional amendment that would have defined marriage as a union between one man and one woman. Bush was also against classifying crimes against gay people as hate crimes, I think they mean, and, as many pointed out, brought the US into a long, costly and deadly war in Iraq on the basis of hidden weapons of mass destruction, which were never found. This, of course, is demonstrative of the hypocrisy of the narcissist, whereby she maintains a facade in relation to being a nice person, but then, of course, demonstrates that she's not, that she would ordinarily be one to speak out against people that were detrimental towards homosexual individuals, but, of course, when it comes to taking some hospitality with an individual, her principles were put to one side. As Groucho Marx once said, "If you don't like my principles, I have others." Ellen later addressed the backlash on her show saying, "I'm friends with George Bush. In fact, I'm friends with a lot of people who don't share the same beliefs that I have. Just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. When I say, be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people that think the same way that you do. I mean, be kind to everyone. It doesn't matter." Well, it's jolly good that she told us all that you should be kind to everybody, but of course, she didn't live by that, which, of course, it then came to mean more trouble for her, who has since been accused of being a hypocrite and not being kind to many people. One of the first critics to speak out was Nikki DeJager, a trans beauty blogger who goes by Nikki Tutorials. She had appeared on Ellen's show in January of 2020 to talk about coming out as trans, but the next month admitted that the experience was not what she had hoped. Let me say that there's a big difference between this show and Ellen DeGeneres, and I'm saying that in favour of this show, she said on the Dutch talk show De Wereld Draait Door. Whispers about Ellen's behaviour grew into shots in April 2020, when comedian Kevin T. Porter tweeted a plea for stories about the star. "Right now, we all need a little kindness, you know? Like Ellen DeGeneres always talks about," he tweeted. "She's also notoriously one of the meanest people alive. Respond to this with the most insane stories you've heard about Ellen being mean, and I'll match every one with a $2 donation to @LA Food Bank." More criticism came Ellen's way after her April 6th show, which was filmed from home at the start of the pandemic. Speaking to the camera from inside her multi-million-dollar mansion, Ellen jokingly compared her plight to that of prisoners in jail. One thing I've learned from being in quarantine is that people, this is like being in jail, is what this is, she said. It's mostly because I've been wearing the same clothes for 10 days, and everyone in here is gay. Commentators quickly took to Twitter to criticize the star for being tone-deaf and out of touch, pointing out that in addition to people dying from COVID-19, most Americans watching her show were doing so from much smaller and less luxurious homes. This, of course, is her absence of emotional empathy and her grandiosity. The backlash against Ellen continued to grow, with social media users pointing to old clips with celebrity guests that in retrospect hinted at bad behaviour. In one particularly viral moment from 2019, Dakota Johnson shared a tense, awkward exchange in an on-air interview. When Ellen asked Dakota how her birthday party was, adding with a straight face that she wasn't invited, Dakota firmly pushed back, saying, "Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. You were invited. Last time I was on the show last year, you gave me a bunch of shit about not inviting you, but I didn't even know you wanted to be invited. I didn't even know you liked me, but I did invite you, and you didn't come." When Ellen questioned her, doubting what Dakota said, she replied, "Ask everyone. Ask Jonathan, your producer." In July 2020, BuzzFeed News published an exposé featuring one current and 10 former employees of the Louisiana-born funny man's former self-titled daytime talk show, alleging racism, workplace bullying, and sexual harassment. Such a culture, of course, comes from somebody who needs to assert control and naturally lacks emotional empathy. That be kind bullshit only happens when the cameras are on. It's all for show, facade management said one. I know they give money to people and help them out, but it's for show. I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to the show's brand, said another. They pull on people's heartstrings. They do know what's going to get likes and what people are going to go for, which is a positive message, but that's not always reality. Most of the accusations were about the workplace in general, including other senior employees besides Ellen. 10 former employees specifically accused 3 executive producers, Ed Glavin, Mary Connolly and Andy Lassner, of bullying. Among the allegations was one made by a black woman who claimed she suffered a number of microaggressions. Her request for a raise was ignored, and she was accused of walking around looking resentful and angry after asking for staff members to undergo diversity and inclusion training. Many pointed out that the culture of a workplace comes from the top. By August 2020, Warner Media had launched an internal investigation. Ellen had issued a formal apology to her 255 employees, and executive producers Ed Glavin, Kevin Lehman, and Jonathan Norman were all fired from the show. Ellen issued a memo whereby she wrote she was taking steps to correct issues with her employees. Even Ellen's former DJ, Tony Okungboa, posted about the talk show host on Instagram, calling out the toxicity of the workplace. I've been getting calls asking me about the Ellen De Generes show, and I would like to address the time I spent there, he wrote. I was on-air talent from 2003 to 2006, and from 2007 to 2013. While I'm grateful for the opportunity it afforded me, I did experience and feel the toxicity of the environment, and I stand with my former colleagues in their quest to create a healthier and more inclusive workplace as the show moves forward. That same month, more celebrities spoke up as well. Brad Garrett of Everybody Loves Raymond fame tweeted, "Sorry, but it comes from the top at The Ellen Show. No more than one who were treated horribly by her. Common knowledge." When People magazine shared a tweet about his remarks, Back to the Future star Leah Thompson replied, "True story it is." Australian radio host Neil Breen also opened up about his experience with Ellen when he was an executive producer on the Australian Today show in 2013. Because it's the Ellen Show, they controlled everything, he said. They controlled the interview seats, the lights, how it would work, everything. The producers called us aside and said, "This is how it's going to work here this morning. Ellen's going to arrive at 10:15 and she'll be sitting in this chair here, and Richard, you'll be sitting in this chair here." They also told him that no one is to talk to Ellen. You don't talk to her, you don't approach her, you don't look at her. She'll come in, she'll sit down, she'll talk to Richard, then Ellen will leave, they said, according to Neil. As a consequence of all of this, the fact is that the show then started to tank, and there was a 43% viewership decline, resulting in ultimately the program ending. Of course, she could not accept that she was at fault, and she declared that it was a coordinated misogynist attack on her, paranoia, blame shifting, and she has mostly stayed out of the spotlight following that. Earlier this week, she chose not to address her fans before quietly cancelling 4 scheduled shows in Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, and Chicago on her comeback tour. The comedian's cancellations came hours after SFGate homepage editor Gabe Lehman published his detailed review of her show at the Luther Burbank Center for the Arts in Santa Rosa, California. Ellen is next scheduled to perform on Monday at the Paramount Theatre in Denver. Nevertheless, although there are further dates, she's ultimately stated that she is now done and that she is no longer going to continue with the career that she once had. This, of course, is a response to the repeated threats to control that she's been experiencing as a result of the criticism that she's had and the fall from grace that she has experienced. In effect, as a narcissist, her control being threatened by these repeated criticisms, she's declared the withdrawal that will take place, which is done for the purposes of nullifying these repeated threats to control. But is there much sympathy for her? Are people sad to see that this is the case? The fact is, below the line, observations are as follows. Dreams of Mandalay reports, for anyone that's ever been a bully or been bullied in life, this story is for you. Truly hope Ellen is remorseful. Well, she won't be. She's a narcissist. In how she's treated people in the past. She put more effort into helping or serving others instead of acting like it was all a mistake or that she's been misunderstood and that she is somehow entitled to success. She still has not learned her lesson. Deborah writes, many stars are really nice on TV, but when you meet them in the street, they are rude. They have to understand that we pay their salaries, not just the TV people, but the fans as well. Lynn Vinny writes, unfortunately, some Hollywood types feel that they reinforce their status by being able to get away with the most rude, demanding and unpleasant behaviour to those they consider their underlings. Well, in actual fact, of course, that is the behaviour of the narcissist who acts in that way. She explains, I'm pretty sure this is the model behaviour that this one's wife brought to the palace, seeing the comparisons in behaviour between this one's wife and Ellen De Generes. Tracy Smith adds, I was also thinking about their similarities, syrupy sweet on the outside, but actual narcissists who are desperate for control and attention. They are like hurricanes that leave a trail of destruction in their path and will never know the true extent of their damage. Callis writes, my daughter was in her audience some years ago and she said it was a very staged show in which they were strictly told when to cheer and clap, scream and jump about like fools and clap more, and the ones picked out the audience for games and winnings on stage were actually actors from Casting Central who got paid to perform for the day. She said that security were everywhere, acting aggressively, instructing people, and the audience would rehearse several times before Degeneres came out. Everyone was told not to approach her, shout out to her, try and speak to her, or touch her. Chris writes, she is a nasty person who finally got her comeuppance after getting away with appalling behaviour for years. She's made millions, so it's not as though she'll have a difficult life going forward. Ultimately, she doesn't need to do anything. She's made a fortune. She's not going to be able to make a comeback because the public have decided that they essentially don't like her as a consequence of the exposed behaviours. And once again, this is an example, as I so frequently identify to you, of whereby if you watch the behaviours over a period of time, those lesser and mid-range narcissists will ultimately be given enough rope to hang themselves. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.